there. Come on in. Welcome into First Take on a Thursday. Max Kellerman, Stephen A. Smith.
What's up?
What's
up? What's on?
How we doing?
How you doing?
I'm good.
Everything all right?
Yeah, we're good.
Let's roll.
Let's get into it.
Let's get it on.
All right, we're going to start with your boy. How about that? It
Yes.
is no secret Aaron Rodgers had a down year by his standards last season. We attribute much of that to the absence of one of his favorite targets in Jordy Nelson, who, of course, was lost for the season due to injury. But according to Rodgers, Jordy's absence hurt more than the play on the field and also impacted the playbook. Quote, "We have specific packages for him that we didn't have a guy who could fill those packages. The truth is we lost a stud receiver who put up incredible all-pro numbers one year, and he's gone the next year without getting that production back. We knew you can't replace a Jordy Nelson." Nelson is expected to be fully healthy for week 1. He's currently on the active, physically unable to perform list with knee tendonitis. Oh, Max, are you okay with Rodgers using Jordy as an excuse?
Yes, because if you ask him what happened, he said, "I lost my best receiver." And he's actually giving him his props. He's saying, look, this guy is irreplaceable. You're going into a season, you want everyone feeling good. But he shouldn't have to make any excuses, Stephen A. What is Aaron Rodgers excusing exactly? Let's think about his season last year for a second. Won 10 games in the regular season, made it to the playoffs, won a playoff game by putting a shellacking on a Washington team some people thought could advance, a shellacking on them. The next week plays the team in Arizona that is now favored, the odds-on favorite to win the Super Bowl right now. That's the Arizona Cardinals. They were considered among the favorites last year in the playoffs. They had the better team. And yet Aaron Rodgers, forget about his Hail Mary week 13 against the Lions. Like, oh, my God, he'll never make another pass like that. Does it again against Arizona with the game on the line, and they call it back. I'm watching the game with Ryan Hollins, my boy, longtime NBA center. He's over at the place. We're watching the game, and I remember distinctly, I get up off the couch, and I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Aaron Rodgers, I think you might be the best who ever did it. You got a shot. You know what the best who ever did it would do right here? He'd do it again. Remember, they just called the Hail Mary back. By the way, even calling it a Hail Mary is not exactly accurate because he threw it, first using his legs to escape pressure, then using his arm to throw it down the field. He threw it where only really the offensive player had a shot on the ball, okay? He does it again. This time, Patrick Peterson is in on the play. Throws it again where only the offensive player can make a play on the ball. They score, forces it to overtime, and the defense gives up a score in overtime. You want Aaron Rodgers to play defense too? So I just want to point out that he is now, quote unquote, making excuses for a 10-win season where he won a playoff game, had a miracle play to tie the game and send it to overtime against one of the best teams in football last year that would have put him in the NFC Championship game. And yeah, he lost his best receiver. I think it's fair to say that if he had his best receiver, they would have done even better, which means at least the NFC Championship game. I'm fine with it.
There's so much to teach you. You know, I mean, Max Kellerman, just a few days ago, you sat up there in your brilliance, your eloquence, you sat up there and talked about how Aaron Rodgers doesn't need to be making an excuse for anybody because if he's a bad man, he shouldn't have to worry about Jordy Nelson. I have said on many occasions, and I will say again, Aaron Rodgers owes no excuse to anybody, but make no mistake about it. Jordy Nelson's absence crippled him because Mike McCarthy did not sit up there and have the requisite game plan necessary to basically offset the loss of a Jordy Nelson because you were evolving everything around Jordy Nelson. Schematically, it was about Aaron Rodgers to Jordy Nelson, an individual at wideout who had accumulated or caught for over 1,200 yards, 3 of the previous 4 seasons. Unquestionably, Aaron Rodgers' #1 weapon. Unquestionably, the speediest receiver on the Green Bay Packers. Without him, what did you have here? You had a situation. Eddie Lacy was fat, out of shape. That was a problem. Richard Rodgers was just coming into his own as a tight end. Randall Cobb can play. We get all of that stuff, okay? Ty Montgomery, he was there. But there was still some stuff that they needed to do. And I just look at it from that perspective, even with Devontae Adams. And I'm saying these guys just were not enough to offset the loss of Jordy Nelson. Because if you're Aaron Rodgers, with that rifle of an arm, with that pocket presence, the things that he can do, being the bad man that he is, you can't do anything if you do not have your #1 weapon there. I understand There are some people out there that'll bring up Tom Brady, and Tom Brady does it without such and such. But Tom Brady plays in an elite and great and, more importantly, consistent system. Max, Molly, that is the fact. Whereas in the case of Green Bay, it was an aberration. It was foreign territory for Aaron Rodgers. And yet still, not having any receivers with breakaway speed, not having any receivers who could get open, not having any receivers who could really separate themselves and be elite and pick up the slack for Jordy Nelson. What does Aaron Rodgers go out there and do? 31 touchdowns, just 8 interceptions. The QBR, okay, where was the QBR? The QBR was at 64, and this is the definition of a bad season. Because he's Aaron Rodgers. This is a bad boy. And so when he sits up there and he says, you know what? Return of Jordy Nelson should cure Green Bay's offensive woes, you are absolutely right. Because they have a year under their belt where they prepared without Jordy Nelson. They saw what that's like. Now he's back. Aaron Rodgers is going to be on a mission to redeem himself for this subpar season he had according to his standards, because it's not like Tebow standards. We all know the difference, right? 64 QBR, 46, you know what I'm saying, completion of his passes. Don't even get me started. So we know the difference, okay? In the end, Aaron Rodgers is a bad man. He is absolutely right with what he is saying about Jordy Nelson. The Green Bay Packers will win the AFC North, by the way. You can book it. It will happen, and it will happen because a top 3 league MVP candidate is quarterbacking the Green Bay Packers. I'm talking about what he is going to do.
You talk about Tom Brady. Well, Tom Brady does different weapons. When Tom Brady doesn't have Gronk, they don't challenge for the Super Bowl. They maybe make it to the AFC Championship game, but you know they're not going to make it to the Super Bowl without Gronk. With Gronk, they become the odds-on favorites. Aaron Rodgers couldn't play defense in overtime, or else he would have made it to the NFC Championship game without his best offensive weapon, without his favorite target. He is a bad man. There's no two ways about that. And by the way, could reclaim this year his status as among the players. You know, the players recently said Cam is the best player in the game.
So you're basically,
Aaron Rodgers can reclaim that from Cam.
So you're basically you're agreeing with me.
I have no problem. I don't think it's an excuse. I don't think he needs an excuse.
I just have one question for you, though, yes, before we get to our next topic that we have here. What about Cam Newton last year?
What about him?
Did he lose his #1 receiver?
Yes.
Yeah. Did he have a lot of weapons? Did he still get the job done?
Oh, excuse me. He had a running game and he had an elite defense. What did Aaron Rodgers have? Did you see Green Bay's defense in certain parts last year? Did you see the receivers unable to get open? Ted Ginn Jr. was dropping passes.
I'm just saying,
Cam Newton's run numbers would have been number.
You're going based on weapons, losing
well, the conversation yesterday, Molly, was whether or not Cam was tier 1. The fact of the matter is Tom Brady, Big Ben Roethlisberger, Drew Brees, Russell Wilson, for crying out loud. These are all tier 1 quarterbacks. Cam Newton is on the come up, but not quite there.
I just want to be clear based on his weapons.
I'm saying it again.
I got one thing.
I did not stutter.
I got one thing to say about Cam Newton. He's a bad man. Ooh,